Right, so let's get down to business. What I want to do is basically give you the little video that I said I'd make earlier in class regarding your assignment, your assignment 3. The brief for it is now available on Moodle. It's really just a checklist, nothing new, no surprises, and it's due on the 19th of March. So let's go straight into that, take a look at it, just like you had assignment 2, we now have assignment 3. I'm going to pop this video underneath it. There is a brief and there is a template. So let's take a look at that brief, take a look at that template so we know exactly what it is that you got to do. So here's the brief, just like the last one, 20% for assignment 2, and then the demo is also going to have to happen during the week of the 19th of March. Now, those of you who are in the Monday, I know it's St. Patrick's weekend, so those of you who normally have a class on Monday, it's a bank holiday, will have your demos on the Friday instead during the lecture. So we won't have a lecture that week, it'll be demos. And those of you who are with Mark on a Friday, I will be taking that class instead and doing the demos. Okay, so that should answer that question. And what's due for it? What do you need to do? Okay, well, obviously, we talked about this in the lecture today. So if you were at the lecture, I'm going to be repeating myself, so you might flick this a little bit faster to make sure the sections you need are covered. It's essentially got two parts, a design document and it's got an implementation. The design document should outline methodology, choices, everything that is enabling your design based on your proposal from CA1. And of course, the second part, B, is implementation. So if we look at that design document section A in this brief, you can see, the purpose of the design doc is to show how you gain this design doc from the use case specs. Okay, so if you need a little recap on use case specs, go back to your lecture 3 and, you'll see what essentially that is. You did a use case spec. It's a type of a static class diagram, and it contained a whole list of text in order to explain what is in the use case diagram, and you would underline that. You were supposed to underline all of that and indicate which ones are the nouns, which ones are the verbs and methods for attributes, and show that. Okay, so there's a lot of videos on Moodle explaining that. You can just look up there, UML video 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll see our
Aiming what typical stand-ups are like.
We'll see the same guy that we were talking about showing that. I mean, you don't have to watch that. I mean, you've done it already, so you don't really need to watch it. But that's, we'll show you a recap. That's what you need to show. We don't just need a regurgitation of your design, sorry, your use case specs. Okay, you really got to show how you developed your use case specs. So an implementation of this untested version based on the use case specs. Okay, so go back and have a look at that if you don't remember. Essentially, this is what's got to have. It's got to have a methodology section. We talked about that this morning. Why are you using use case tools? What's the purpose of a methodology? Why on earth are you using an object-oriented methodology? Have an answer to that question. Do not leave that question unanswered. Well, because this is a software engineering and testing course that happens to use PHP. So it's all about the software engineering. It's not just a PHP course just to get it working, just to kind of get your A to B. It's getting A to B using the correct methodology. This is so important. I cannot stress how important that is. So put that in there, answer all those questions, understand what is a class diagram, why is you use a class diagram, what is a class diagram, go and take a look at the lecture and you'll see it. You'll see what a class diagram is. You'll see that a class diagram is essentially a static use case tool. It contains multiplicities. It contains generalizations. You can see there payment, credit, cash, check. It's a payment, check is a type of payment. That could just as easily have been user, employee, admin, where employee is a type of user. Here is a association, so order details will contain an item. Order contains customer. All right, no surprises there. Most of you have a diagram like that already, but you do need to understand what that is and explain what the class diagram is, why you're using it, all right? Especially your process of how you got that from your proposal. Okay, enough said about that. So methodology, class diagram, ERD, and how you got there. Implementation, right? Implementation, how did you actually implement this design? Do you have a front end based on HTML, CSS? This should include an SQL database file that you create, so you can always create that database. I will want to create a lot of those databases for correction purposes. So all PHP files. So essentially, you just make sure you know how far you want to get here. Implementation checklist. Can you do the CRUD? Can you do the CRUD via objects? Can you do a generalization? You must have at least one generalization or inheritance, one partial aggregation, one full composition. Users should be able, you should be able to demonstrate all of this from your user interface, not just from your, what would you call it, like database tool. You got to do that from your interface. Okay, so that's a checklist. You know, lecturers give you checklists for a reason. You know, take advantage of it. That's the marking scheme. All right, so that brief is there. You should be able to answer a lot of that questions, especially on use cases from lecture 3. Go see lecture 3. If you don't remember that, go see lecture 4. If you don't remember how to do a class diagram, it's really just a sort of a description of everything you did with this before in other modules. So we can show you how to make a class with private and public attributes. And I've got some more examples. I don't want to put them in this video. I'm going to show those in the second video. I've got plenty of examples on Moodle. They're at the very bottom of Moodle now, where we have some actual classes. Okay, so here's just like a little design that I want to implement, and there's some classes. There's car PHP, which we can implement there. I don't want to do it in this video because it's just about the brief. Okay, so but you know, you can go ahead and look at that. Second thing you need for this CA3, I want to keep this video under 10 minutes, is the template. Here's the template. We're going to implement that template. We're going to put that template into, you know, this is where you can write it up. So there's, again, no surprises. This is very similar to your template that you did for, very similar to the template you did for the last assignment, CA2, and it's, again, just fill in the blanks. It's not just filling in the blanks. You can still change sections. Like, I know I only have 6 sections, but if you want to change them, feel free. Feel free to put 10 sections in. This should contain, obviously, the names and everything else, student numbers. It should contain an executive summary. I want you to explain the purpose of this document in an executive summary. 200 words max, roughly between 100 and 200 words. What is the purpose of this document? Okay, this is your design document. Okay, you should be able to explain that. We talked about it many times in lectures and labs. I've answered that question enough. So you should be able to write that. Now, if you can't summarize it in 100 words, well, the rest of these sections can fill it up. So the purpose, functional specs, components, you've already done that from your last one. Methodology, all those questions I'm talking about, static versus dynamic diagrams, volatile storage, persistent storage. Persistent storage versus volatile storage. What's all that? Memory versus database. Okay, so why are you using it? That's why you need to know. That's why you've got classes. You're using classes because you want to manage your temporary storage. Otherwise, it's just churning stuff out the screen. Okay, so I talked about that a lot in the lectures. I'll try to put some other little video and keep mentioning that, so at least you're reinforcing your description of why it is you need classes in the first place. You could easily do this like just with CRUD, but you know the checklist says CRUD with objects. Right, so then you've got requirements again. Don't just regurgitate your requirements. Show how those attributes were made. You know, underline your class's attributes. Show how you actually used your class use case specification, or if you only partially used it, or if you didn't use it at all, or if every table was able to be derived from your use case spec. That's up to you. Case diagrams, class diagrams, obviously with multiplicities, generalizations, which is an inheritance, aggregation, which is a composition. See lecture 4. Lecture 4 Moodle will tell you all about that. Okay. Okay. Aggregations, compositions. What you really should be concentrating on to ensure this is done correct is the last bit. All right. So the template. Conclusions, but there's a checklist. Checklists are given for a reason. When a lecturer gives you a checklist, you should pay attention because that's the marking scheme. You'd be graded on the quality of your content, the completeness of your content, and the clarity of your content. Make sure you can answer all those questions well in order to get the full grade. Does the design include all of the aspects of the requirements? Maybe you had to skimp on stuff. Maybe you had to take some stuff out. Maybe you had to add stuff. Are you satisfied with all parts of the documents? Have you explained the methodology? Boom, really big question. Methodology and design choices, not just regurgitate a class diagram. What choices did you make to build that diagram? Perhaps your choice was it was too big and I had to turn it down. Okay, that's fine, but you got to be able to explain all choices. So you really need to understand what a class diagram is, where the design comes from, and the general means by which you created it. Okay, not just I just kind of pulled these attributes out of nowhere. Okay, so I'll leave you to do that. I'm keeping this video at 10 minutes, so we're at the 10-minute mark now, and I'm going to stop. Okay, so done. Have a